Today we're going to talk about setting margins and bleeds, and we're also going to talk a little bit about image resolution. So first of all, let's go ahead and set up our document and set up our margins. I'm just going to hit the keyboard shortcut for a new document, Command N, to open up our new document dialog box. Notice in here that you can set up your margins, your page size, columns, etc., etc. Right now, by default, it's set at picas. What I'd like to do is I want to set it up so that it goes with inches. Some people prefer to work in picas, but for this illustration, I'm going to go ahead and change it to inches. I'm going to click Cancel. I'm going to go up to InDesign and go to Preferences, General, and let's go down to Units and Increments. Picas, let's go ahead and switch that to inches and horizontal to inches. Origin is a spread. We'll go ahead and leave everything else the same and click OK. Now, if I hit Command N to create a new document, you'll notice that it's by default set for the letter page size at 8.5 by 11 inches. You also know that over here it says more options or fewer options, and this basically contains your bleed and your slug, which we're going to talk about in a minute. And we can set up our page any way that we would like. But for now, right down here is where you can set your margins based on how you would like things to look, depending on the individual project that you have going. This link means that whatever parameter I put in here, it will apply to all of these. And sometimes what I like to do is I like to add an extra pica on the bottom of my page for a footer if I'm working on a multi-page document. Let's say I'm doing a 5-page document. So what I want to do is I want to unlink this chain and apply only an extra pica down here at the bottom. Now notice if I put +1 pica, okay, we are in the inches parameters here, but we want to just add 1 pica here. If I type in +1 pica and hit Tab, you will notice that it adjusts it automatically in the inches format. InDesign went ahead and did the math, so now we have an extra pica on the bottom. And my margins, right now by default I have 1/2 inch margin, and of course if I wanted a 1-inch margin I could change this to a 1-inch margin. I'm going to change it, let's say a 2-inch margin on the top, just so that you can see what it looks like. Once I have everything set up the way that I want, I can go ahead and click OK, and it will create my new document. Now you'll notice right here that I have my margins and I have a little bit more room on the bottom because of that extra pica that I added. Now let's say once I've created my margins, I want to add a bleed in there. Typically you would set this up when you set up your document, but if by some chance you missed it, you can always go to File, Document Setup, and it will bring up these options again. Okay, I can change my page size, my orientation, etc. But if I go into my more options again, it will show your bleed. Now typical 8.5 by 11 inch bleed is 0.125 inches. Okay, now because I have this link here, it's going to add it to all these parameters. So if I go ahead and hit Tab, you can see it's put up 0.125 inch bleed all the way around. What is the purpose of a bleed? A bleed is if you want to print to the edge of the page. When it is being cut, it's going to have to cut off a small portion of the image. So you want a little extra space to compensate for what is going to be cut off. I'm going to go ahead and click OK right here, and you can see this red line right here going all the way around. This is the extra space that we will need. So for example, if we were to put an image in here, I'm just going to go ahead and make a text box. And I'm going to make a text box the complete distance of the bleed. Double click my hand tool to center my content. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to import an image into this box. File, Place. Find a certain image, doesn't matter what. Let's try this old paper texture right here. I'm going to click Open, and it places it inside this box. I can go ahead and use my different tools up here to, in fact, let's size this down, and we're going to have to rotate it just slightly. I'm going to hold Shift so it rotates, and again we'll change our box to the size. Let's go ahead and center it, and we are going to fit the content proportionally. Actually, since this is a paper texture, we can skew it a little bit and get away with it a little bit. Usually you don't want to skew your images because people will be able to see that it looks a little off. But in this case, let's go ahead and fit our content to the frame. So now I have this image right here, and so when it's printed, it will be cut off right at the edge of the page, and we have that extra room for the bleed. Now let's talk a minute about image resolution. Once you import this image, sometimes you will see it at a less resolution, and usually you're going to need an image that's 300 dpi or more if you're planning on printing this. Print quality is 300 dpi plus. Of course, web quality is only 72 dpi. But since we're working for print, we're going to want images that have, pretty high quality. Sometimes when you bring these images in, you will notice that they're just not as good a quality, and you'll wonder why. It's not because the image is not high quality. It's just the way it's set up in InDesign to sometimes save memory and so that your program operates a little bit faster. So we're going to go under View and Display Performance right here. And this is your typical display. Okay? If I were to zoom in here like this, you can see we don't have exactly the very best quality on this paper texture. If we wanted to see the best quality, we would just go ahead and select the image, View, Display Performance. We'd go to High Quality Display. Now what this should do, as you can see, it looks a lot better. This will show the actual resolution of the image. Now you want to be careful when you do this because it'll obviously make your machine run slower, especially if you have a multi-page document of like 30 or 40 pages. A magazine layout with lots of different images. Usually you want to keep that image performance down to the typical display or fast display. As you can notice, fast display just gets rid of the image altogether. But if you have lots and lots of images, you don't always have to know what those images are. You just have to know that they're placed there. For the most part, though, I would recommend that your display performance be on typical display, which is a low quality, and it makes sure your program runs smoothly. So that's basically how your bleeds and your margins and your image resolution works.